incentives offered to students in some areas have changed from pizza or ice cream to yogurt parties or other more healthy food choices. Now, what kid in their right mind is going to bust their hump for yogurt and carrot sticks? If that is all they have to look forward to, they might as well drag their feet and remain mired in mediocrity. However, if readers still think this will be the only impact, then they are still not waking up to the complete picture. For often with these kinds of government programs, using a carrot and an appropriate snack choice under the regime of the food fascists and stick approach, once the carrot has been dangled for a while, the stick is eventually brought out to whack those with a more independent streak. The director of the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement said, "We need schools, parents, and communities across the state to get on board and become active in this effort that will make a profound difference in our children's lives." These school officials might have say in how schools respond, and even communities, if one sees such social conglomerations as essentially under government control, rather than as the organic, dynamic relationships that develop uncoerced from the interaction of free people. But what if parents decide not to cooperate? One only need look at the last three words of the director's statement to get a glimpse of where things are headed. Unless he's referring to his own offspring when he says our children's lives, that statement is very revealing as to what this higher mid-level functionary is thinking. The state, ladies and gentlemen, according to this worldview, holds ultimate title to our progeny, and you are merely a hired hand granted the privilege of overseeing them for a few years, the number continuing to decrease as the proponents of universal preschool and the like continue to make headway, but who must ultimately raise them in accord with the will of the Lord of the Manor. To those thinking they are so sophisticated in their moderation, don't go dismissing with the flick of a wrist and the crinkling of a nose what I have to say. In this day and age, especially in certain Republican circles, you can pretty much get what you want by dressing it up in the name of national security or the war on terrorism. That is exactly what Mike Huckabee has done. In comments before the Southern Governors Association regarding what he perceives as an obesity epidemic, Huckabee said, "You've got a serious situation with a generation of kids coming up, so unhealthy they won't be able to pass the military physical. We keep talking about the war on terror. Who's going to fight it if we don't have enough people who are healthy enough to show up and pick up a backpack?" End quote. Thus, it has finally been revealed why government officials are feigning concern about the expanding waistlines of many Americans. They might initially start off claiming their efforts are for the purpose of increasing the expectancy and quality of life, but ultimately it is about nothing more than getting you healthy enough to die or toil for the glory of the fatherland, or maybe rather homeland, as the aspiring totalitarians among us prefer to call it nowadays, so much so that even Smallville producers are so frightened that they won't speak the word, preferring to call the agency the Department of Domestic Security. Huckabee's comments also reveal the kind of double standard being promulgated by the ruling elites. According to Huckabee, the primary reason Americans must be compelled towards physical fitness is that we might be able to fulfill our obligation of national service. However, it is quite obvious he exempts his own family from these expectations. Normally, a person's weight is the last thing I criticize, as at about the age of 9 or 10, on a visit to the doctor's office for an unrelated matter, I was handed a diet plan with the rear end of a hippopotamus splashed across it, and even in Christian schools, the vilest of taunts were often reserved for the overweight students. However, a man with a son the size of one of Huckabee's offspring, and the other two children don't look like they've skipped many meals either, ought to be among the last to insinuate you are an unfit parent if your progeny happens to be bigger than Nicole Richie. On the Drudge Report around December 19, 2007, was featured a portrait of the Huckabee household. Standing behind his parents was a young man, it would not be an exaggeration to say, who was nearly as wide as his two parents put together. Now, in this land of the free and the home of the brave, if the Huckabee spawn wants to be that big, that is his prerogative, and most of the time, most of us should keep our mouths shut about it. However, I am not the presidential contender assailing the patriotism of those whose waistlines exceed the guidelines established by those implementing the New World Order. But you see, it is not an obligation of those in the governing class, such as the Huckabees, to be ready at a moment's notice to answer the call of the nation. Rather, that responsibility falls to you, ladies and gentlemen, to hand over the lives of your children and to sacrifice in wars the elites never intend to send their own children off into. The Huckabee sun is allowed to expand until his heart's content or it bursts. Never will he have to face the embarrassment of being weighed in front of his classmates or his parents receive in the mail threatening letters on how this information was forwarded to government authorities. Never will he face the embarrassment of having to be weighed in front of his classmates or his parents receive an intimidating letter in the mail from government authorities. During the Christmas season, the media about had a coronary attempting to determine whether the intersecting boards of a bookshelf were a subliminal attempt on the part of Huckabee to interject the cross into the campaign. Too bad they have not been as concerned about a plan that could potentially curtail basic liberties and bring yet another level of surveillance into the lives of the American people if applied at the national level. This is Frederick Meekins.
Thursdays on the Edge.
I've seen you in the streets and at your political convention, talking of your crusade, talking of your nation and other things too terrible to mention. And you proclaim your Christianity, you proclaim your love of God, you talk of apple pie and mom. Well, I've just got one question and I want an answer. Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Maybe Jesus would bomb the Syrians, 'cause they're not Jews like him. Maybe Jesus would bomb the Afghans on some kind of vengeful whim. Maybe Jesus would drive an M1 tank and he would shoot Saddam. Who would Jesus bomb? Battleships, I've seen you in the house upon the hill, and I've heard you talking about making the world safer and about all the men you have to kill. And you speak so glibly about your civilization and how you have the moral higher ground, while halfway around the world your explosives smash the buildings. Ah, if you could only hear the sound. But maybe Jesus would sell landmines and turn on his electric chair. Maybe Jesus would show no compassion for his enemies in the lands way over there. Maybe Jesus would have flown the plane